on Schreiber.
Sidearm whip, scores!
Now in front, Fennell scores! Ball Rabel, splits two and scores!
Kylie Ohlmiller showing off those shifty skills.
Kelly, not shy, bounces one home! What a start!
Welcome to the Pro Lacrosse Talk podcast. I'm Hutton, he's Adam, and together we have all the latest news from all your favorite professional lacrosse leagues. We're happy to have you for another episode of Pro Lacrosse Talk. As usual, I, Hutton, am joined by my co-host, Adam. Adam, how are you today?
I'm good, Hutton, ready to talk about some exciting games from this past weekend.
Absolutely. So we're going to talk about all the games this weekend. We had some PLL, MLL, and WPLL games. We also had our first trade of the PLL, which we'll talk about shortly, and then the punch heard around the lacrosse world as well. So we'll talk about that. But first, let's get started with our fast break segment and give you your scores of the weekend. We'll start off with the PLL on Saturday. The Chaos, who are now 2-1, defeated the Redwoods 12-11 in overtime, and the Redwoods fall to 1-2. The Whipsnakes won their third overtime win in a row to remain undefeated against the Archers, who are now 2-1. On Sunday, the Atlas, who are now 1-2, handed the winless Chrome their third loss of the season, 13-12. On the MLL side, we had the Bayhawks outlast the Lizards 16-14. The Bayhawks are now 2-0 and undefeated, and the Lizards are still looking for their first win at 0-3. As for the WPLL, on Friday the Fight defeated the Brave 15-12. The Fight are now 2-0. The Brave are now 0-1. On Saturday, the Pride crushed the Command 18-5. Both those teams are now 1-1. All right, so that concludes our fast break segment. Let's get into the first trade in PLL history. So we have attackman Jules Henningberg from the Whipsnakes was traded to the Redwoods for defenseman Alec Tullett and a 2020 fourth-round draft pick from the Redwoods. So Henningberg will be going to the Redwoods, while Tullett will join the Whipsnakes. Henningberg obviously leaves a crowded attack line with Reeves, Rambo, Drenner, and they even have Dylan Maltz and Connor Kelly, who can also join the attack line. So he's leaving a crowded attack, but he's going to another crowded attack with obviously Clark Peterson, Matt Cavanaugh, Ryder Garnsey, and Joey Sankey. Tell me a little bit about what you thought about this trade, Adam.
I think, if you look at what social media has been talking about, it seems like everyone's in favor of the Redwoods in this one, getting Jules Henningberg. And obviously, he's a fantastic player. Of the two players he's actually been playing, Alec Tullett really hasn't seen the field yet, but really, really strong defenseman out of Brown, second-team All-American. And people aren't really talking about that fourth-round pick, too. With the small amount of teams, a fourth-round pick next year is going to get you a pretty significant player. So it's interesting to see. It is a fourth-round pick and not a first, second, or third for a really strong attackman in Jules Henningberg. But, Tullett may have not been playing yet, but he's been kind of stymied by a really strong defense that the Redwoods already have. They have Larkin Kemp on defense, Landis. He's just been not seeing the field because of a really strong defense. Jules Henningberg might not have been seeing the field that much, as you said, because of the really strong Whipsnakes attack line. So I think this one might work out, surprisingly, for both squads.
No, I agree. I think you can run Henningberg out of the box, at the midfield, get him that shorty matchup. The Whipsnakes already kind of did that a little bit. So I think, I think it'll be a good fit for him. And, he's got Matt Cavanaugh that he can work with. Obviously, Joey Sankey. And Clark Peterson has also been flying under the radar despite, having a great rookie season as well. We'll see how that turns out. And like you said with Tullett, he was a solid defender at Brown. He was really monumental in their Final Four run in 2016. So, I think it is a win-win for both squads. And it's an exciting trade for the first one. These are two very good players that could make an impact on these teams. So it wasn't just a throwaway trade. It was a pretty big one for the first one in PLL history.
It'll be interesting to see, too, what trades go down kind of going forward. This clearly was something that was probably in the works probably for a few days or a few weeks already. If you look at the timing of the trade, the clock started for the trade option, and this trade went down. So it'll be interesting to see what we have going forward.
Absolutely.
And another big thing is these players don't have to pick up where they were and go other places. All six teams are going the same places, so it's super interesting to see the dynamics that'll happen when they're just going to a different practice field rather than changing cities as they would in the MLL.
Yeah, that's actually a really great point, something I didn't really think about. It doesn't really change much since they're all going to the same cities. So yeah, definitely they can kind of just jump in and make an impact right away. Since we're on the topic of the Redwoods, I think we'll start out with the Redwoods Chaos game, which was a little bit chaotic. But before we get into the big ticket item in that game, I want to talk about the game itself because it was phenomenal from start to finish. You know, the Redwoods got off to a hot start. They had a two-pointer from Sergio Salcido, and then Matt Cavanaugh assisted Joe Walters on their third goal of the day. That gave them a 3-0 lead, but the Chaos, quickly battled back. They got a transition goal, which led from a Riordan save. It took an 8-second clear all the way to Miles Thompson, who scored. And so they battled back. And this one was, back and forth from start to finish. It really was a great game, and, it took extra time. I think what impressed me the most, though, was that both defenses were broken down pretty fairly easily in the first quarter. You had the Chaos triple teaming Cavanaugh that left Joe Walters wide open. That's how they scored their third goal of the game. And then you had Redwoods switching on picks, which allowed Josh Byrne to get an easy sweep goal. They kind of took a little while for them to wake up, but then the second quarter started, and it took us, I think, 7 or 8 minutes before we finally saw another goal. So, the defense kind of came alive a little bit, and I think what was encouraging is we talked about last week in the Redwoods loss to the Archers how they weren't getting that good of two-man game play from the attack, and they completely took that to heart this game because Cavanaugh looked great. He was feeding, he was scoring, had a nice behind-the-back goal. Ryder Garnsey got his first goal. They were all clicking. I think everybody on that line, maybe with the exception of Sankey, contributed. But even if he's not scoring out there, he's been used as a decoy. And I'm looking at it now. He had an assist. So yeah, a lot of good production from their attack line. You had Cavanaugh 2 goals, 2 assists. Joe Sankey had an assist. Clark Peterson had a goal, and then Ryder Garnsey had a goal and 2 assists. So really solid production. I think Jules is going to step in and add even more to that. So, really solid group play. They're not just going to initiate from the midfield line, although Brent Adams, who's scored in every Redwoods game so far, had a hat trick. And he's been, flying under the radar as well. He's been playing phenomenal for them at the midfield.
Yeah. This game really, to me, was exactly what Paul Rabel and the rest of the squad that started the PLL wanted a game to look like. Fast-paced offensive, highlight reel goals. What we'll talk about, some bruising and some highlight reel fights potentially. It's exactly what they were looking for. I don't remember watching. This game really stuck out to me when it comes to the stick skills from professionals in comparison to the collegiate level. The behind the back goals, the opportunities on fast break. It was a fantastic game from an offensive standpoint, despite not being the highest scoring game of the weekend.
No, yeah, absolutely. I mean, you had Deemer Class had a nice casual behind the back, and you had Connor Fields had 4 goals and assists. Miles Thompson had another hat trick and assist. Yep. I mean, I think that's the one thing too about this Chaos offense is it's funny. If you would have told me that Miles Jones was gonna be this quiet 3 weeks in the season, I would have, said, this team's probably 0-3 then. And they've gotten so much production out of Josh Byrne, Connor Fields, and Miles Thompson, and even Eric Scott, had a goal and an assist in this game, that Miles Jones, was blanked this game. He was blanked, I think, last game as well. He hasn't had to do much, and I think once he comes alive, this team's going to be very scary. So, look out, and obviously, like I said, Josh Byrne, he had the game-winning goal in overtime, which really was a defensive breakdown by the Redwoods. He just got open in space and finished right in front. And now they're 2-1 with a pretty good goal differential after their blowout win against the Atlas last week. So they're sitting pretty good at 2-1.
Yeah, I agree with that. And with the Miles Jones things, I think he's in a unique spot that he's almost being a facilitator this year in comparison to having to take over an offensive offensive set when he was with the Atlanta Blaze previous years and with the Bayhawks and whatnot. So it's really interesting to see him in a different offense. And I was laughing as I was watching the Redwoods and Matt Cavanaugh. I think he heard us last week talking to his brother up on the Outlaws, and he didn't want to be outdone, and he had a big week this week.
No, absolutely. So let's talk about the big play that overshadowed this phenomenal game, because this is what I had an issue with. The game was great, and we're not talking about any of the gameplay. We're talking about one incident. The gameplay in the PLL has been phenomenal. I think we're looking at the best version of lacrosse right now. I think I can firmly say that after 3 weeks. The pace of play has been fast. Thanks to the shorter field, 52-second shot clock. There's been physical defensive play, nifty stick checks. We've seen mesmerizing behind-the-back goals, a lot of long-range two-pointers. It's had everything. You got 5 of the 9 games in the Premier Lacrosse League so far going to overtime. Over half of the games have gone to overtime. It doesn't get more exciting than that. And what does the PLL choose to promote but a scrum that happened in the third quarter where it was Sergio Perkovic who got taken down, and then we got a little scrum, where Jack Rowlett, he cross-checked Redwood's midfielder, Nick Ocello. His helmet came off. Then Blaze Reardon, the goalie, tackled Ocello, and then Ocello got up and threw a punch that landed pretty heavily on Reardon in the helmet. We had seen a lot of physical play from the past 2 weeks, and I was fine with it. I'm fine with a little pushing and shoving. But when I saw Reardon body slam Ocello and then Ocello get up and punch him in the face, I was like, all right, well, we're getting our first 2 ejections of the PLL. And what did we get? Nothing. We didn't get ejections. We got penalties. Mark Lassini was called for a hold. He was given a 30-second. Jack Rowlett was called for a 1-minute unsportsmanlike. Blaze Reardon got a 2-minute unsportsmanlike. And Nick Ocello got a 2-minute unsportsmanlike, an additional 5-minute misconduct for his sucker punch. And all these penalties were not releasable. But I don't understand how you let that happen. And I guess fighting apparently is in the rule book. They announced it on the broadcast. But that's BS to me. A player throws a punch, he's ejected. 3 of the 4 major sports, if you throw a punch, you're ejected. Any level of lacrosse, you throw a punch, you're ejected, other than the box lacrosse league. But we'll get to that because a lot of people have been bringing that up, and I don't think that's an excuse to introduce it to the field game. This really got my blood boiling just because the reaction after, not only was it that, okay, this is allowed now in the Premier Lacrosse League, but people are praising it, and people are saying it's good for the sport, and I just completely disagree. I completely disagree. I'm fine if you want to, let some skirmishes go, some pushing and shoving in a heated moment. That's great. I talked about that last week, how I like that. But don't tell me this is good for the sport of lacrosse. And don't tell me that you care about the other aspects of lacrosse, because we had an overtime game-winning goal. And what is the photo they chose to post on social media for this game recap? They posted the fight, the picture of Ocello and throwing the punch. That's what you're going to make the game about. It's one thing to allow fighting, and if that's what the PLL wants to do, then so be it. But to promote it, they are partners with U.S. Lacrosse, a governing body for youth lacrosse, and promotes safety within the game, and you're going to allow fighting? Give me a break. And this wasn't even a good fight. People want to say, well, it's allowed in hockey. Hockey allowed. Okay, well, first off, hockey's moving away from it. Sure, it's still allowed. It's within the rules. But, it's a pretty hefty penalty even if you do fight in hockey. You kind of screw your team over. Furthermore, they're moving away from it. The Olympic Hockey Committee doesn't let them fight. And guess what? I don't think the Olympic hockey is any worse than NHL hockey. And you want to talk about the box lacrosse? Okay, fine. Why should I still allow it in the PLL? Just because another version of the sport allows it doesn't mean you should allow it in Premier Lacrosse. I'm going to talk about this a little bit more in my article coming out. But I was very shocked at how the PLL handled it. And it's one thing, like I said, to allow it in your game, but to actively promote it. Premier Lacrosse is still promoting this fight rather than promoting the phenomenal lacrosse we saw on the weekend. And that's the problem, is this fighting is a distraction. It is not good for the game. If you want to allow it in the game, that's fine, but don't make it about the game. And that's what they're doing right now. There are so many better things. There's 99 different reasons to watch the Premier Lacrosse League, and the fighting is not one of them. Let me read you a tweet that the Redwoods tweeted out on Father's Day, the day after it happened. Quote, "Thanks to my father for teaching me that. Shout out to Steve Ocello," unquote, @ Nick Ocello. So Nick Ocello said that, and then Redwoods say, "Happy Father's Day, ? That's the tweet you're going to send, and they linked the video to it? That's what you're going to put on Father's Day? Are you kidding me? What example are you teaching these young kids? And I don't want to hear that, oh, the PLL is not supposed to be the parents. Okay, they don't have to be the parents. But the PLL has also talked about growing the game, partnering with U.S. Lacrosse, running the PLL Academy and these different day camps. They're very involved in the youth. So if you don't want to be involved with the youth, then don't go and do these extra stuff off the field and tell me that you're about the sport growing. I talked to Paul Rabel. I talked about his vision him and Mike Rabel have for the league. They want to grow the game throughout the United States. They have a beautiful vision. But you're going to tell me that they're going to put fighting at the forefront of this league? Then that kind of vision goes out the window for me. You know, you got to walk the walk and talk the talk. And I just don't feel like they're doing that with this. Maybe I'm overreacting right now. Maybe we don't see as much fighting going on. But, you know, people are like, oh, it's a one-time incident. The Chrome game, you saw Galloway get knocked over. And guess what happens? They start tackling each other. You can look at the video on our website. They start tackling each other. I mean, if I want to watch pro wrestling, I'll go watch pro wrestling. If I want to watch lacrosse, I better be able to watch lacrosse, 48 minutes of it, and not have to worry about stupid fights that interrupt the game flow. Because this fight, not only did this fight interrupt the game flow, it took them 8 minutes to come to an announcement. I timed it. It took them 8 minutes to come to an announcement on what the penalties were, and then another 3 before we actually got play. That's 12 minutes in real time. That's a whole quarter that we had to wait before we could resume play. So don't tell me this is good for the game. If the PLL wants to promote fighting, that's fine. If you're going after those meathead fans that want to see the violent aspect of the sport, sure, that's the fan base you're going to go after. But don't be surprised if this decision alienates both the current and potential new coaches, parents, players, and fans that you've been, trying to actively recruit to watch your product. The same fans that have been tuning in weekly to watch the best players in the world not grapple and throw punches, but play lacrosse at the highest level the sport has seen.
No, I completely understand where you're coming from, and have to agree that I'm not a big fan of the promotion of the fighting. Now, I mean, at the same time, it's in the rule books that it's something that happens, and both you and I have played and have definitely gotten heated before in games, and I completely understand that it's in the rule books, but I'm not a big fan of it, obviously, but I can understand when players get heated, things happen. They do get the penalties. I understand that they weren't kicked down. They got those penalties, but at the same time, not a big fan of the promotion of it. There's too many great things about the league to start promoting that side of the game. Like you said, from the NHL, NLL standpoint, they definitely have the fighting side. I think the NLL honestly has more fighting than the NHL has, just from the games I've watched over the last couple of years. So not a big fan of the promotion side of it, but completely understand the fighting in the game in terms of the heatedness, but not a big fan of it overall, and hoping this doesn't become something that people know the game for. I think that's something that you want to know the game for: the highlight reel goals, the awesome saves, all those types of things, in comparison to the fighting. I can see from both of us being communications majors, I can see how I necessarily wouldn't do it, but the utilization of these things may grab fans' attention, but maybe for the wrong reasons, like you said. So and like we saw Barstool, a bunch of accounts that you might not see tweeting out highlights of the game, were tweeting out the fight scenes and those types of things. So intriguing and interesting concept for them to take that route in terms of kind of no holds bar, all options.
But where do you draw the line, Adam? And I know you said that, like you said, it got them views, and I get that. I get, obviously it's bringing you attention. But my point is, you eject these guys, you still have the whole skirmish that happened. You still get the attention. You're not losing any more attention by it. You include it in the highlight, but you don't promote it and you don't allow it. So I just think that's ridiculous. And the thing with box is, people want to say, well, box lacrosse, it's allowed. All right, yep. Tell me the last time you mentioned a box player. There's a lot of great players that grew up with the box game and came over to the field game and really performing. You got the Thompson brothers. You got Zach Greer. You got all these guys that grew up with the box game and are now playing at a high level on the field game. When do you ever mention, oh, that guy's a great lacrosse player because he learned how to fight in the box game? Yep. You never talk about that. We don't talk about that.
Stick skills.
Exactly. We talk about their creativity. We don't talk about, their brutality from playing box lacrosse. And don't tell me about these sports like NHL and NLL, because I get it. It happens in those sports. And guess what? NHL's trying to move away from it. You don't have these enforcers anymore. You have faster and smaller players now, and sure, it's still part of the game, but it's not the end-all be-all of the game. You get these guys, and they're still out there playing hockey, and I really like to believe that these guys are out there still wanting to play lacrosse. So I give them that, but don't make it about the fighting, and that's what the PLL did this weekend. They had a real opportunity to show what they were about and set the tone for the season. And I'm afraid that this is going to become more of a distraction than anything, because we had 3 phenomenal games this weekend from the PLL. And what are we talking about? We're talking about the fighting. We haven't even gotten to these other 2 games, and I just think that's ridiculous.
Yeah, no, I completely understand where you're coming from. I think we're kind of saying the same thing in different ways, and if it's in the rule books to say that it's allowed, maybe I'm fine with them not getting ejected from the games, but hoping that it doesn't kind of lead to more fighting. I guess we're kind of same 2 sides of the same coin.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I just think too, I think this was a short-term media buzz for them too. They got a lot of attention from it, obviously, but if the goal is to get on SportsCenter top 10, you're not getting on SportsCenter top 10 because of a stupid little fight between a third-line midi and a goalie. You're getting on SportsCenter top 10 because of a phenomenal play, like the Connor Fields one that we saw last week. So that's just my 2 cents. You can read more about my opinion on it in my article. You can tweet at me whether you agree with me or not. Honestly, if you disagree with me, I'd like to hear more about it. And I feel like right now I'm in the vocal minority, but hopefully there's some people out there that are sane. But anyway, yeah, phenomenal game. Unfortunately overshadowed by that incident. And I would have said that was probably the best game, honestly, of the Premier Lacrosse League so far if it hadn't been for the game that followed it, the Whipsnakes Archers. So why don't you go into that a little bit, Adam?
Sure, man. That was of all the games, it was a pretty exciting one to see. 2 undefeated teams, 2 teams that got there from a pretty distinctly different way. But it was a fantastic game to see. Ended up coming down to what else? Overtime again. For the 3rd week in a row, the Whips were able to pull one out after a failed clear. Ryan Drenner, for the 2nd week in a row, was able to drop one in during the overtime period to give the Whips their 3rd win. They're atop the leaderboards for the PLL. It was a tale of kind of 4 quarters, 2 halves. The first quarter was pretty much dominated by the Whipsnakes. Whether it was on the offensive side, they were winning 4-0 at the end of the quarter behind a couple Terps goals from Chanenchuk and Rambo with the assist to Chanenchuk on that second one. Then Burnlore came up huge in the first half, and specifically the first quarter, came out with 8 saves. Of all the goalies over 3 weeks, he's been the most dominant for me. We've had some really strong games from the likes of rookie Timmy Troutner and Jack Concannon, but he's been the most consistent of all the goalies I've watched, and that was kind of one of his goals in a few interviews I've watched to be more consistent this year, and he's definitely done that. But after his dominating performance in the first quarter, Tommy Schreiber, Captain America, came out with an absurd second quarter in a bunch of different facets. 3 goals, 3 assists in that second quarter. And at halftime, the Archers were on top 7-5, basically off of all his fantastic opportunities. Whether he was passing, whether he was shooting, it was just absolutely dominant. One of the most dominant quarters we've had all season from an offensive player. Third quarter, back and forth. Both ways. Same with the fourth quarter. Biggest difference in the fourth quarter was Kelly for the Archers at the face-off X. Wasn't doing too hot up until the fourth quarter, and came up big in the fourth quarter to help them recapture the lead at one point in the fourth quarter. And we ended with a flurry of saves from both Gittleman and Burnlore at the end of the game to get us to 10-10. And don't you know it, as I said, saves from both goalies again in overtime. And then Ryan Drenner drills another one off a failed clear to give the Whips their 3rd victory of the season. So fantastic game. Another great opportunity to showcase offense the PLL was looking for, and some really awesome defensive battles as well. So whether it was Marcus Holman, Ryan Drenner, fantastic game on both sides. These are 2 of the top teams, obviously, that came in both undefeated. And I think after this week, I'd still consider them both two of the top two teams.
No, yeah, it had everything we wanted and expected out of this matchup. And I mean, how about that 2-pointer to send it to overtime, and then Drenner coming out and getting the overtime winner 2 weeks in a row. I mean, this guy's got ice in his veins. Great game, but it really got me thinking though. I mean, I think you covered it all from the game standpoint, but imagine if Pat Spencer didn't declare this weekend that he was, playing basketball for Northwestern. Imagine if he was on that Archers team. I mean, oh man, they would be stacked. And they're playing phenomenal without him. Maybe, who knows? Maybe it would have meshed up their mojo that they have on offense. Man, I mean, I can't wait to see him hopefully join the PLL next year. I mean, if he joins the MLL too, that'll be exciting. Whatever league he joins, he's going to be a star to watch. Human highlight reel, Pat Spencer. But we wish him the best of luck at Northwestern. We'll be watching that basketball program closely next year.
I know we're a pro podcast and a pro site, but man, it just got me thinking with all the collegiate lacrosse on the women's side I've been watching over the last few years, with his transfer to Northwestern. Man, I can only imagine what it would look like one day to have a Big Ten men's program at Northwestern. I'd be pretty excited to have that added on to the docket for the Big Ten.
No, absolutely, and I think that would add an interesting dynamic to the teams that are already in that conference. So yeah, we'll be interested to see. That concludes our Whipsnakes Archers though recap. We'll go into the Chrome Atlas game, which was another heartbreaking loss for the Chrome. I mean, they seem like they've got it at some points, and then I think they just have these mental mistakes that kind of kill them. I mean, they went up 5-1 at one point, and it was that 2-pointer in transition that they let the Chrome score with 3 seconds left in the first that really gave the Atlas the momentum back. And then the Chrome, didn't score any in the second quarter. They went down 8-5 in the half, and they still came out a little bit flat, but they eventually worked their way back. Eventually, they took a 10-9 lead at one point, headed into the fourth quarter, but the Atlas came back and extended their lead to 12-10. And the Chrome, they just never fought, and the Chrome, they never laid down and died, and they came back and tied it up 12-12. But Busick, 48 seconds left, put the dagger in them, 13-12 win for the Atlas. The Atlas get their first win, and the Chrome are headed to Baltimore, looking for their first win still. So we'll see what happens out of that. They have another tough matchup against the Redwoods next week, so it doesn't get any easier for the Chrome. But they do have some bright spots. They did have some bright spots though. You have Justin Gutterding. He had 3 goals and 2 assists. Jordan Wolf had a goal and an assist. So they're definitely. They're right there, but something's got to change. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's something defensively that Coach Starza tries to implement, but they're struggling. You could, if you listen to John Galloway's post game, he could tell he's a little disappointed in himself in Cage. He feels like he's letting the guys down, but he's confident that they're going to get back on track. So we'll be watching them closely. We will talk about it a little bit later who we're going to pick in that game, but we have essentially a Duke Notre Dame matchup for them next week. So Duke historically does well against Notre Dame players, so we'll see how that turns out when they take on the Redwoods next week.
Yeah, no, it shows the parity in the league and how close fought these matchups are, and it's so interesting to me to see the Whipsnakes who have gone to overtime how many times and are 3-0, and then you see the Chrome who have kind of gone down to the wire at the same token and are 0-3, and the parity in this league is pretty substantial, and it shows that those small plays, those ground balls are what makes the difference and between winning and losing, and I'm excited to see how they bounce back. They every week in those post games, John Galloway and Justin Gutterding has said one play changes kind of that loss to a win or a win to a loss. And I was joking as a goalie. I saw Galloway was wearing some baggier sweats this week. I was wondering if he was thinking that was maybe one extra save here and there. But it was a great game to watch. Another strong battle. Connor Busick, Ryan Brown, Dustin Gutterding played phenomenal. So great game. Unfortunate for the Chrome to go down to the bottom of the barrel in terms of the standings, but I wouldn't count them for dead yet.
Yeah, we'll see what they end up doing if they can bounce back. All right, now we'll go to the WPLL side. So we had 2 very different games this week for the WPLL. This is their second week. We had the Brave play the Fight, which was a close game and very high scoring. And then we had the Pride and the Command, which the Pride just dominated the Command, and it was never even really in doubt for them. Yep. So let's talk about the Brave Fight a little bit.
Sure, yeah, no. Katrina Dowd, undoubtedly player of the game, 4 goals and 1 assist for the Fight. Taylor Cummings, maybe not on the offensive side of the ball as much, just 1 goal and 1 assist, but had 4 ground balls, dominant at the draw control. 5 draws, 1, and even had 3 caused turnovers. Rookie Elizabeth George out of Princeton, one of my favorite underrated players in the WPLL for the Fight this year, had her first goal of the season. But on the Brave side as well, last year's WPLL MVP, Mary McCool, had a bunch of goals and an assist in the game. Number 2 pick, Dempsey Arsenault for the Brave, also got on the leaderboard for the goal side of things with a couple goals and an assist. This year's number 1 pick as well, Sam Apuzzo, had a hat trick for the Fight. Kayla Trainer was pretty dominant for the Fight as well. The back and forth battle between the two, and last year's really dominant player, Kylie Oldmiller, coming up with a couple late goals for this one to bring the Fight to a couple goal victory over the Brave. So Brave came out pretty hard after not playing during week 1, and the Fight just as dominant as they were in their first victory of the season. So when it comes to the leaderboards, the Fight are definitely at the top for me. Obviously, they're the only 2-0 team, but whether it was a win or a loss, they were going to be at the top of my rankings for WPLL.
It's clear that they're the team to beat right now. They have so much talent on offense. I mean, on both sides of the ball. And the fact that they're undefeated, obviously, is important too. But they beat the Pride 6-4 in their first game, and then the Pride went out and dominated the Command. So I just think, the Fight just have proven that they're the team to beat right now. And the Brave, I think, will bounce back. The Brave also, had a phenomenal game, and like you said, it was close till the very end. The score, even though the Fight ended up winning by 3, it was pretty much neck and neck till the last 4 minutes when the Fight just got a few goals just to put the win away. But really great play so far. We're excited. We're both going to watch them next week in Baltimore, so that'll be exciting for us to watch in person. I haven't seen a WPLL game yet, and I don't think you have. Have you either?
I've watched all the games online, and they have some
But in person?
intriguing. Yep, no, not in person yet. And for those who don't know, there's a little bit difference when it comes to the rules and the free position shots. There's only 3 options for a free position, and there's one less defender on the field as well for the WPLL. So they've been really creative in terms of creating more fast-paced offensive game for the Professional Women's League, and they're just doing some really cool things. So I'm excited to see them in person for sure.
Yeah, no, it'll be great to watch them. And we got the Pride Command was the game on Saturday. So Brave Fight was on Friday, Pride Command was on Saturday. That game, very lopsided. The Pride got off to, I think, an 8-1 lead at one point and never really looked back. They ended up winning 18-5. And that was a big improvement for them because they only scored 4 goals in the last game. So to only score 4 goals in the last game and then, score 18 in your next game is a pretty big feat. So they moved to 1-1, where the Command, coming off a big win against the Fire, ended up dropping 1-1. And yeah, they just couldn't really get anything going on offense, it seemed like. But player of the game's got to be Pride's Haley Majorona with 4 goals, 3 assists, including the first 2-pointer in WPLL history. And she also had a nifty hidden ball trick as well that ended up fooling the Command completely. That's definitely going to make our top plays this week. Despite the blowout, it was still very exciting with a lot of great play from the Pride and a lot of fun goals to watch. So definitely, I'm pumped to see this in live action next week. And next week we have 2 games before the PLL game. So it will be the Brave and the Fire, who are both 0-1 playing each other, looking for their first win, and then followed by the Fight Command, which will be an interesting one. The Command get blown out.
Yeah, it was an awesome game to watch despite the score. Just showed how high powered the Pride's offense is, and they pretty much everyone that was playing on the offensive side of the ball scored for them. Well, it was Alex Ost, Maryland grad, who had 4 goals. Sammy Tracy was dominant from the draw control. Molly Stevens out of Florida, 3 goals. On the Command side, 3rd overall pick, Kenzie Dent out of BC, held her own with 2 goals on the day for the Command. But there was just never a doubt that the Pride were going to take this one. And kind of going off the first game as well that we were discussing, every week is not more important, but just as important when it comes to the WPLL, because they're only playing 5 weeks before going to the semifinals and championships. So every week is more important in the WPLL as they're playing just 5 regular season weeks. So whether it's the Fight, who are 0-1, or those teams that are kind of in the middle at 1-1, they're playing for playoff position. The Fight are in a good spot at 2-0, and we'll see what happens kind of going into next week in Baltimore. I'm really excited to see firsthand what the play is like in person.
Going from that, we have only one MLL game this week, but it was probably one of the most exciting games. Honestly, if you didn't watch lacrosse on Saturday, I don't know what you were doing, because you had 2 overtime games in the Premier Lacrosse League, and then you had a thriller in the Bayhawks Lizards that was back and forth. I mean, you had 4 lead changes and 5 ties in this game, and there probably would have been more ties if they kept not scoring 2-pointers to jump over the other one. So you had the 2 oldest teams in professional lacrosse in terms of the field game with the Bayhawks and the Lizards. And if you told me, Adam, that arguably the MLL's biggest star, Rob Pinnell, and the Lizards would start out 0-3, I would have called you crazy. But that's where they're sitting right now after another heartbreaking loss. They've been close. Barely lost to the Outlaws, only lost by 1 to the Cannons. And now, they lost by 2 to the Bayhawks here, 16-14. Again, another team that's kind of like backs against the wall. I mean, it's early in the season, but you got to start stringing some wins along if you want to, do well in the playoffs and win a championship. So they definitely have the talent, but yeah, I don't know what needs to happen here. I think the defense right now is kind of a little lost. They're a lot like the Chrome in that regard, whereas it's like the little things. They had a failed clear that thankfully Ben Rantle got in the way and ended up saving. The defenseman from out of Ohio State. He was actually cousins of my one friend Ryan Lachlan, who I played lacrosse with. But shout out to Ben Rantle, who ended up on a failed clear somehow making a save on what it looked like to be a sure Bayhawks goal. And then you had Austin Kaut, who had some big saves too, but you just can't win when you give up 16 goals. So I don't know what needs to change for the Lizards, but definitely need to reevaluate what they're doing on the defensive side, letting up that many goals. But don't get me wrong, the Bayhawks have a great offense. I honestly think their attack with Lyle Thompson, Steele Stanwyck, and Colin Heacock are probably the best, in the MLL right now, arguably. So we can't discredit their talent on offense. Lyle Thompson doing Lyle Thompson things, with the one-handed flip passes to the nifty box-style goals. I mean, he had 5 goals, 2 assists, and 6 of those points came in the second half, so he just went off, and the Lizards really had no answer for him. Stanwyck also adding 3 assists was nice to see in his second game of the season. So, yeah, the Bayhawks look good. They're undefeated right now, 2-0. They'll look to keep that rolling. But it was a really exciting game. But I got to say the best play of the game was Kaut, 7-yard assist to Jeff Ray. And they gave him the assist, which was great to see. But it's kind of funny watching the difference between the PLL and MLL field. It's only a 10-yard difference. But for some reason, the MLL fields look so much longer. And, we see these great assists from Austin Kaut, goalie, 70 yards. So props to Kaut for getting his first assist of the season. Maybe he'll have some more. We'll see. But, overall, a great game to watch. And we hope the Lizards can kind of turn it around and get their first win next week at Boston. So we'll see if they can get their first win of the season. They lost to Boston earlier, 13-12, so it's definitely a winnable game for them. But something's got to give sooner or later for them.
Yep, and that goes to the parity of the league as well. Like you said, the Cannons are at the top of the leaderboards in the standings, with the Bayhawks 2-0, Lizards at the bottom 0-3, but only lost by a goal, so doesn't mean they're out of it already. There's a lot more weeks to go when it comes to the MLL. Lizards could be right back in there with a win this week.
Yep, absolutely. So we have a new segment that Adam and I are going to do, and we're actually going to choose who we think is going to win each game in the PLL, MLL, and WPLL each week. We're going to tally up who does the best at the end of the season. I don't know, maybe winner gets the other person lunch. I don't know. What do you think, Adam?
I'm all for that.
All right. So we'll start out with the PLL games. We have the Redwoods versus the Chrome on Saturday. Who do you like in that game, Adam?
You know what? I'm taking the Chrome. They've been so close for so long now, and the Redwoods have been playing well as well, but the Chrome got to come out on top at some point. They've been on the wrong end of those one-goal losses for so long now. I'm taking the Chrome. I'm taking John Galloway having a big game and leading them to victory.
I really want to take the Redwoods, but I'm taking the Chrome as well for a little bit different reasons. If you look at the rosters of these teams, you got a lot of Notre Dame guys on the Redwoods and a lot of Duke guys on the Chrome. And historically, we know Duke has had Notre Dame's number. So I think the Duke guys pull one out, and I think the Chrome get their first win this week as well.
There you go.
All right, so the next game we have is the Atlas Whipsnakes. So the Whipsnakes are undefeated, and the Atlas just got their first win. They were sitting at 1-2. Who do you like in that game, Adam?
I'm taking the Whipsnakes in this one. I know the Atlas just came off a victory, but if you told me that before week 3 the Chrome kind of handled the Atlas very easily, I wouldn't have been surprised. So I think they figured some things out on the offensive side of the ball, but I think the Whipsnakes' offense is too dominant. I think the Whipsnakes are going to pull it out. 14 of those 20 guys are Maryland grads, and Atlas have a bunch of Hopkins guys on the team, so that battle is always going to be a battle, and I think the Whipsnakes are going to come out on top.
I'm going to choose Whipsnakes as well. I think they've shown that they pull out these wins, and is it too much to predict that it's another Whipsnakes overtime win? So they've had 3 in a row so far, so what would a fourth be? Odds are probably better that they end up winning in overtime than that they don't at this point. Yep. So I'm going to take the Whipsnakes as well. All right, our third game from the PLL on Sunday is the Chaos. Our third game from the PLL on Sunday is the Chaos Archers, which we'll see in person. Who do you like in that game, Adam?
I'm thinking the Archers bounce back after their OT loss this week to get another victory and get that second seed currently in the standings over the Chaos.
All right, well, I'm going to go with the Chaos. I think the Chaos are hot right now. I like the Archers team a lot, but I just think the Chaos, the way they play, they can score 6-on-6 settled offense. They can score in transition. Their defense is great. Reardon, really leading that defense and having a lot of, great saves in these games. He's really coming up big for them. And not only is he coming up big, but he's also pushing the envelope on transition. So I think the Chaos keep rolling and get their third win in a row.
I can't bet against Captain America and Tommy Schreiber, especially after what he did this week.
No, understandable. All right, now we got the MLL. So we have 2 games. We have a Friday game, which is the Dallas Rattlers versus the Atlanta Blaze. Who do you like in that game, Adam?
I don't think it's questioned that Blaze are one of the top 3 teams in the MLL this year. Unfortunately, Rattlers are at the bottom of the league, and just from a team standpoint, I think it stays that way, and Blaze pull this one out. Maybe it's not as lopsided as one would think, but I think the Blaze are going to pull this one out pretty easily.
Yeah, no, I got to agree with you. I think Randy Statz and Shane Jackson are going to put on a show. I think the Blaze are going to win pretty handily against the Rattlers. We'll see. Maybe they'll make it interesting, but like you said, I agree. The Blaze are definitely in the top 3 teams right now in my book, and the Rattlers are sitting down at the bottom, and I really don't know if it's that close.
Great.
All right, and our second game from the MLL this week is the Lizards at the Cannons on Saturday. Who do you like in this game, Adam?
I think this is going to be another close matchup. It's going to come down to the cage. And I think we already talked about Austin Coutts going to have a big game, and the Lizards are going to finally get in the win sheet with the W this week.
I agree. I think, Pennell had a hat trick this last game. I think he's going to come out and have another big game, and I think this time they get it done on defense. I don't think the Cannons are as good as their record. I think they're a good team, but I think they're definitely beatable. I think they tend to play down to teams' level. I mean, we saw they got out hot to the Rattlers. They got out hot against the Rattlers last week, but kind of let them creep back in the game. It was never really in doubt, but I think they have the tendency to take the foot off the gas a little bit, and I think that might hurt them against the Lizards this week.
I agree.
Who do you like in the WPLL this week? We got the Brave versus the Fire in our first game. Who you picking?
I'm going Fire in this one. I know the Brave came off a pretty close loss just this past week against the Fight, but I think they're going to pull this one out to get their first victory of the season. I know it might not be something that's. Let me start over.
You're fine.
I was pulling up the Fire's team at the same time. You know what? In this game, I'm taking the Fire. I know the Brave came off a close-fought loss against the Fight in week 2, but I think the Fire have a really strong squad as well, despite the week 1 loss. Taylor Van Thoss, rookie out of Loyola's, I think is going to be pretty dominant at draw control, and they have another fantastic player in Michelle Tomolo out of Syracuse. You name it, they have a stacked squad as well, from her to Hannah Powers. They have a really strong offense and defense as well. So, and I think I'm also kind of loyal to them still being a former Philadelphia team, the Fire. I think I'm going to take them in this one.
All right, well, I'm going to go Brave because I think, they put up a lot of points against the Fight, who I consider to be the best team last week. I think, they're looking for their first win. Obviously, so is the Fire, but I think the Brave have shown me a little bit more, so I'm going Brave in this game. And then the second game, I got to go with the Fight over the Command. They beat the Pride 6-4, and the Command got crushed by the Pride, so process of elimination, I think the Fight are the best team, and I think they're going to pull one out. I think it's going to be closer than we think, though, but definitely think the Fight are going to beat up on the Command this week.
Yeah, I think after 2 weeks, the Creams rose to the top. Fight are the best team in the league. I don't think it's going to be that much of a fight, and they're going to pull this one out pretty easily. Their roster is too stacked to not win.
Absolutely. All right, so that concludes our game picks of this week. We'll see who ends up being right, who ends up being wrong next episode. So we're introducing one other new segment. It's the question mark, I like to call it, named after the question mark Dodge. And this is where you guys can submit your questions to us. So obviously we don't have any questions this week, but next week we hope to have some questions from you. So you guys can tweet at us at Pro Lacrosse Talk, DM us on Instagram at Pro Lacrosse Talk, or email us at prolacrossetalk@gmail.com. If you took an issue with my opinion on the fighting in the PLL, tweet at me. Let me know. I'd love to hear it. It doesn't even have to be a question. It can be, a statement as well. I'll respond to it. So anything you guys want to ask us, feel free to send it in, and we'll try to do our best to answer them next week. All right, so our final segment is overtime, and that's when I ask you, Adam, what are you looking forward to most this weekend?
I'm looking forward to being in person for some of these games. We'll both be there on Sunday to watch the two WPLL and PLL game on Sunday. I can't wait to see the synergy and the energy that is at Homewood at Hopkins on Sunday, and to finally be in person with you to watch a couple pro games.
No, absolutely, and that goes along with what I'm excited to. I'm excited to watch some live lacrosse with you. Especially the WPLL, which I've only watched online so far. And I really haven't seen too many of the women's games, period. So I'm really excited to watch it live and in person. Probably going to be a big event. We're at Homewood, which you could say is one of the most historic stadiums in lacrosse history. So it's going to be a good one. Hopefully they get a good turnout. We'll be there to aid in the turnout. So it's going to be an exciting weekend of lacrosse. All right, that concludes our episode 3 of Pro Lacrosse Talk. If you guys enjoyed the episode, please let us know. Feel free to subscribe. We have a website that is now out. I know we've been teasing it a lot. It is now officially out. Go to our website. We have recaps up there. We have videos. We have opinion pieces like my fighting opinion piece. Feel free to take a look at that. We're going to have features on these athletes in the different leagues. I'm doing one on the Give and Go Foundation, which is Adam Gittleman and Scott Ratliff's foundation, where they try to spread lacrosse throughout the globe. Adam's going to get an interview with Joey Sankey that he's got lined up, and he's going to write an article on that. Obviously, Joey Sankey coming back from 2 major knee injuries as well as cancer, and now he's playing professional lacrosse again. So I think that's just a phenomenal story, and Adam's going to have that for you on our website. So please check out our website. Let us know what you think. Feel free to send us your email and subscribe for our newsletter. We're going to be sending that out. So some really great things going on for Pro Lacrosse Talk, and we're glad that you guys are listening and hopefully reading our stuff. So that concludes this week's episode. We hope you guys join us next week. And this has been another edition of Pro Lacrosse Talk.